Welcome to Thrifty Garage. My name is Carson, and in today's video I'm going to take you along with me on a drainage project. As with any drainage job, this client had a problem that needed a solution. Before beginning this work, all of the water from the surrounding neighbors would collect and run towards this retaining wall, which was above the walkout basement. When all this water would collect, it would run to the low point. The low point was right at the top of this wall, and when there was heavy rainstorms, it would actually run over the top of the wall in a waterfall-like fashion. They had a couple of sump pumps in the basement. They couldn't keep up with it. Whenever it would rain heavy, it would just flood the entire basement. So pretty big deal, pretty major issue, and needed a solution to it. So looked at the property, and we thought that we had enough room for some slope to the front yard. So we planned on installing some catch basin boxes and running it out to the curb. In order to do this project, there were a few obstacles in the way. One of the first things we did was call in utility locating. We found that we had power, water, and communication lines all in the area we wanted to run, as well as there was an existing fence we needed to work around. This home was fairly neglected, as you can see by the size of this tree. I removed this tree and a few others while I was at it for the owner, and they were very appreciative of that. In order to get into the backyard to start trenching, I needed to remove this fence panel. It actually worked out pretty well in the fact that the gate was hinged on the opposite run, so I was able to use the width of the gate, plus the 8-foot panel that I removed gave me plenty of room to work around and get into the backyard. Once I removed that panel, I was able to leave that gate intact. As I was digging the trench, I would lay the pipe and put a level on it to ensure that I had positive slope. I wasn't using a laser level or any complicated tools on this job, and that enabled them to get a pretty rough grade out towards the street. As I continued digging the trench, we obviously got deeper. With the grade, the way it was in this property, as I moved towards the fence line, we actually gained an elevation. The elevation rose up quite a bit, and then again we sloped back off towards the street. So in the middle of the trench there, about where the fence was, it was about 4 feet deep, whereas towards both ends it was much less. As we trenched back towards the street, we got closer to those utility lines, and that final stretch had to dig that by hand, about 15 feet, actually crossed 2 power lines and 1 water line and 1 communication line. The only line I actually found, I encountered, was the communication lines. I've seen them as shallow as a few inches. Usually I haven't seen them much more than 8 inches in depth. So those are always one that you want to find. Usually power and water are down. Power is usually down at least 3 feet. Water's down about 4 feet. So I didn't want to risk it on this one. I figured might as well trench it by hand. Once I got my trench ran, I needed to cut out the curb. I measured out the size for these 3 4-inch pipes and used an angle grinder with a concrete attachment. That actually worked surprisingly well. It cut through that very fast. It was a small blade. I probably could have done better getting like a 7-inch blade and be able to cut deeper. It just wasn't enough to really bite into the concrete. I had to use a sledgehammer. In this case, I actually used the backside of an axe. But that wasn't able to get the job done. I just had to keep chipping away at it and then keep grinding out more as I could. Would have been a lot better with a demo saw, cut-off saw, with a larger blade, but I made do with what I had. Once I cut out the concrete curb, then I started laying pipe, and I started laying the pipe at the curb moving back, using level in 3 places on the pipe to ensure that I had positive drainage. And I backfilled just the tail end and used the weighted machine to hold that pipe in place. And then I could glue the pipe and push into the bell end without having to worry about that pipe getting pushed back out into the street. This 4-inch pipe is fairly difficult to work with. It doesn't have a lot of flexibility. I've done a lot of work with irrigation, so 3/4-inch pipe, 1-inch pipe, very flexible. You can kind of make them move where you want them to. This 4-inch pipe is much more rigid. So with this trench, there was a slight curve in it. There's a 100-foot run, and there's just a slow curve on that 100-foot run, so nothing too difficult for me to bend that pipe where I needed to go, and I didn't have to use any 45s or other fittings. In addition to catching the water coming in from the neighbors, we also wanted to catch any roof water, so we tied into 2 of the existing downspouts, and that was running out to the street as well. I ran the pipe back. I would get the first one leveled and graded, and then once I knew that that was graded and the surrounding soil was graded, then I could glue in the other 2 pipes and know that they were going to have the right slope. So I worked back until the first downspout, put a Y in there and 245s in order to get my angles right, and go up to the downspout, continued running my pipe over to the other downspout, plumbed that in, plumbed the inlet box for that one in, and then I tested my system. Before I backfilled anything, I wanted to make sure everything was working right. I ran my water through that system, worked out excellent. Next, I finished running the other 2 pipes, backfilled them, and installed those 2 boxes. Now with the boxes, I did something a little bit different on this. I've got 2 atrium style grates, so if there's any grass clippings or other debris that washes in, hopefully that doesn't clog the drainage grate and that water can still flow into the system. I also installed those 2 grates that were a single run out to this curb. I installed those about 2 inches lower than the other inlet box that was connected to the gutter downspouts. I did that for a couple of reasons. If for whatever reason those gutter downspouts did back up and reverse flow, that water would come out of that inlet box and move into the other 2 boxes, and that should carry the water away. And also I didn't want to overload that gutter system, so if there was a heavy rain, hopefully those other 2 boxes would catch all of the water, and then the gutter drain would only be taking the water from the gutters and off the roof. If the water got high enough, that would help with any overflow that came. All of this is probably overkill. Initially the plan was actually just to do 2 pipes, and the homeowner said, hey, well, we've got a trench open, might as well put the extra cost of materials in there and just make sure we're for sure okay. Now let's talk about materials briefly. For this project I used 4-inch PVC pipe, Schedule 40. This pipe is really a good option. It's going to be thick enough that it's not going to crush. A lot of that black corrugated pipe works well when you're doing a trench by hand. Really small, light stuff, light work. But I've seen that get crushed very easily, especially if you're dealing with equipment. So if you're backfilling this with equipment, that black pipe usually gets crushed. So solid wall PVC is definitely the way to go. It is a lot more expensive though. I used 3 12-inch inlet boxes, should give plenty of flow and a lot of water to go in. And then obviously on the output side, we just daylight it out into the curb. For the backfill, I would use a scoop of dirt, make sure there weren't any big rocks in it, and then gently lay it over the pipe about 4 inches in depth and gently compact that with the machine. And then once I had done that, I knew that the pipe was fairly protected, and I would scoop much larger scoops in, and then I would use the Mini X to pound it back into place and compact it. This would be better with a jumping jack compactor to compact this trench, but this is a pretty good way of getting it most of the way there. I cleaned it up as best I could. I scraped off the existing grass, which was mostly weeds, so the homeowner didn't care that we keep it super clean. I do have other options if we're trying to keep it more nice, if the lawn's nicer, put down plywood or tarps to protect the existing stuff from getting contaminated with soil. So I backfilled the trench, cleaned it up real nice. The last thing I had to do was set that fence panel back in. I broke the concrete off those posts. Used the machine again to pick that up, set it into place. I was doing this all by myself, so I didn't have a lot of other options. Used a level to make sure that the fence panel was in correctly. Obviously the house side, I knew the level was there. Used concrete to backfill in the posts and set those posts after I regraded the backyard, and then moved to the front yard, finished cleaning up and grading the front yard, and then hauled off all my tools and equipment. So this is a pretty straightforward project. This took me a day and a half, start to finish. Rented a Mini X for it, and obviously had to buy all the materials. A lot of the tools I already had, I didn't have to end up buying a sledgehammer. Should have bought that sooner. Like I showed you, I used the axe in the front to break off the curb, and then the next day when I went back, I went and grabbed a sledgehammer from Home Depot to break off the concrete on the fence posts. This type of project takes some time. It takes some hard work. I'm definitely sore. Gluing up that pipe's, like I said, not very easy. It's a little bit more difficult. But as long as you know what you're doing, these projects can be a great solution to a problem. Thanks for watching Thrifty Garage. Please like, comment, and subscribe.